There is a phrase in Keth military doctrine, translated loosely, that means, "The one who bleeds first, loses first." We wrote it into our training manuals 400 years ago. We built entire tactical philosophies around it. We were so proud of that phrase. I am looking at the aftermath of Bay 7 right now. The human bled first. She bled a lot, actually. I have the medical report. I've read it 3 times. I keep reading it because I cannot reconcile the numbers with what I saw her do after those numbers were already true inside her body. The instructors are not talking about doctrine anymore. They are not talking about much of anything, honestly. One of them is just standing in the corridor outside the bay, staring at his own hands like they belong to someone else. I should file my incident log. I've been trying to start it for 40 minutes. Log entry timestamp 0614 hours. Training cycle 7. Bay 7 incident. I don't know what to call it. Incident feels wrong. Incident is what you call a malfunction, a spill, a scheduling error. What happened in Bay 7 was not an incident. I just don't have the word for what it was. Let me start from the beginning. No, let me start from the part where we were all still certain she would quit. That's the part worth understanding. Her name was Sergeant Viola Moss. I did not learn that until day 3. On day 1, she was just human female, in intake batch 14, bunk assignment C7, the one who arrived carrying more gear than regulation allowed and didn't apologize for it when the intake officer flagged her. She just looked at the intake officer with this flat, patient expression, the kind you use on someone who is technically correct about something that doesn't matter, and then she redistributed 2 items into her vest pockets with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this exact bureaucratic workaround approximately 900 times before. The intake officer wrote something in his log. I wrote something in mine. 0817. Human arrives. Immediately finds the loophole. Note for future. I am the observer assigned to Training Cycle 7 for the Cross-Species Integration Program, CSIP, which everyone pronounces as a word because the acronym is apparently satisfying in most languages. My job is to watch, document, file assessments that determine whether alien candidates, human candidates this cycle, have the requisite physical and cognitive profile to advance to joint unit placement. I am not supposed to have opinions about the candidates. I have a lot of opinions about the candidates. And I also have a cup of what our mess hall insists on calling rekva, a bitter, steaming liquid that smells like scorched wood and tastes like ambition punished, which I drink compulsively during observation shifts because I have been doing this job for 6 cycles and my nervous system has apparently decided that the flavor of bad decisions is comforting. I was drinking it when I first watched Viola Moss line up with Batch 14. I noted her immediately, which I wasn't supposed to do, and you're meant to observe groups, not individuals. But she had this quality, not loud, not attention-seeking, more like a density, like she occupied more of a space than her actual physical dimensions should have allowed. She was not large by human standards, from what I understood of them. Medium height, lean. She had what humans apparently call a runner's build, which I've since learned is a politely neutral description for a body that has been worked very hard for a very long time and has gotten very efficient about it. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed structural, like a design choice, like it was load-bearing. She looked around the intake hall with these pale, unremarkable eyes. Not nervous, not assessing, just noting. Like she was reading a room she'd already memorized. The Keth officer beside her, a full head taller, twice her mass, a chest like a bulkhead door, didn't even glance at her. I logged that too, 0820. Keth candidates do not register human moss as relevant presence. This will be interesting to revisit. Training Cycle 7 is a 14-week gauntlet designed to break everyone and graduate the people who refuse to understand that breaking was an option. I have observed 6 prior cycles. The structure is the same each time. Physical endurance, tactical assessment, team coordination, Does psychological stability under simulated combat stress, and, in the final weeks, something the instructors call the integration scenarios, which is a polite name for we put you in situations designed to make you fail, and then we grade how you fail. The first 3 weeks are attrition. No tactics, no strategy, just load-bearing, sleep deprivation, temperature exposure, and relentless physical demand. The point is to see who quits. The instructors are not cruel exactly, but they are not kind either. And they are efficient. They know what the program needs, and they remove what the program doesn't. Batch 14 had 22 candidates. 9 were kith, our primary species, bipedal, dense-boned, with a cardiovascular system that performs extraordinarily well under sustained oxygen-poor conditions. Good in the field. Patient, methodical, enduring in their own particular way. 8 were Velhari, smaller, faster, and with a threat detection neurological wiring that borders on precognitive in close quarters scenarios. Excellent under chaos. 4 were Droon, which, honestly, the Droon are here every cycle, and every cycle. I wonder why, because they are spectacularly well suited to completely different kinds of conflict, and the whole program seems slightly mismatched for their profile, but they keep sending them and I keep writing it in my assessments and nothing changes, so. And then there was Viola Moss, Yule 1 human. The program has been running human candidates for 3 cycles now. The integration results have been, variable is the word in the official reports. The word in the break room is unpredictable, which people say with different inflections depending on their personal feelings about unpredictability. I have always found unpredictability interesting. This has not always served me professionally. Day 4. 05:30 hours. The endurance runs begin before the mess hall opens, which I've always thought was a specific kind of institutional cruelty dressed up as discipline. You're asking bodies to perform on empty, which is, I know, it replicates field conditions, that's the point. But I stand by my opinion that it is also mean. The run is 12 kilometers. Terrain variable, uphill, uneven footing, one water crossing that is cold enough to make even Keth candidates audibly unhappy about it. Full kit. And no time limit. But anyone who comes in past the cutoff gets a secondary task that eats into sleep rations. I position myself at the 7K mark, which is where the first dropouts usually happen. There's something about that particular stretch. The slope levels out, and you can see how far you've come and how far you still have to go. And the geometry of it defeats people in ways that a purely steep incline wouldn't. The Keth come through that stretch in tight formation, which they do because Keth are culturally conditioned to move in groups, and it helps them. It genuinely helps them. The presence of their fellows functions almost like physiological support. I've read the studies. The Velhari come through scattered but fast, each one privately racing each other in a way they'd deny if you asked. The Droon come through singing. I've stopped being surprised by this. I've just incorporated it into my logs. 0611. Droon singing. Morale appears stable. Viola Moss came through the 7K mark at 0618. She was not in formation with anyone. She was not racing. She was running with this quality of motion that I find very difficult to describe even now. She looked like she was working, genuinely working, like this was not easy. Sweat soaking through the collar of her kit. Jaw set in a way that suggested a conversation she was having internally that I would not want to be present for. But she was also pacing. That's the word. Pacing. She was rationing herself across the 12 kilometers with a mathematical deliberateness that I don't think she'd even consciously mapped out. It was bone deep. It was learned. She passed me at 7,000 and she did not look at me and she did not look at the slope ahead. She looked at the ground 3 meters in front of her feet. That's it. Just those 3 meters. Like she'd decided the whole run didn't exist, only ever this next small piece of it. I wrote in my log, 0618. Human Moss, still in. Pacing strategy noted. Monitor. She finished 8th overall. Not first. Not heroically fast. 8th. The Velhari, who finished first, gave a full-body shake of satisfaction and immediately began doing something with their communications device. The Keth, who finished second through fifth, stood in a cluster and breathed at each other in the particular companionable way Keth do when they're satisfied. Viola Moss came through the finish line, stopped running, and stood for a moment with her hands on her knees. Not doubled over, just paused, like she was taking stock. Then she straightened up, looked around the finish area with that same flat-noting expression, located the water station, went to the water station, drank approximately twice what anyone else was drinking, and sat down on the ground cross-legged with her kit still on. She did not remove her kit. She just sat in it. And she looked at her own hands. And then she looked up at the 7K slope in the distance. You could see it from the finish area, just barely. And she watched it for a moment with this expression I couldn't pass. I logged it anyway. 0647, human moss, post-run, not removing kit, observing course. Expression, unclassified. Week 2 is where I usually start building preliminary profiles. By the end of week 2 in cycle 7, my preliminary profiles were largely what I'd expected. The Keth were performing to their strengths. The Velhari were performing to theirs. The Drun were doing things I found aesthetically interesting but tactically baffling, and I was managing my feelings about that. And Viola Moss was in the middle. That's the honest assessment. She wasn't leading anything. She wasn't failing anything. She came in 8th on the runs. She scored in the middle third on tactical assessments. She completed the team coordination exercises with this methodical competence that was neither memorable nor inadequate. She found her role in each team configuration, and she filled it without overreaching and without underdelivering. Instructor Pavith, primary evaluator for the cycle, and a Keth who'd been running these programs for longer than I'd been alive and had the perpetual expression of someone who found most things vaguely disappointing. Instructor Pavith told me at the end of week 2, "The human is a filler candidate. She'll make it to week 6, maybe 7. She'll wash out in integration." He said it with no particular emotion. He wasn't being unkind. He was just applying doctrine. The one who bleeds first, loses first. Moss, in his professional assessment, was not a bleeder. She was just not strong enough to not be one eventually. I logged his assessment. I logged my own, which read 0900. Instructor Pavith Preliminary Assessment. Human Moss Washout Prediction, weeks 6 to 7. My assessment? Unresolved. Need more data. I am almost embarrassingly cautious about predictions. It has held my career back, honestly. It has also, occasionally, been correct in ways that matter. Week 3, Day 4. The obstacle course. This one is mine to describe properly, because it's the first time I saw the thing I didn't have a category for. The obstacle course in Cycle 7 is a physical test, but it's also a psychological one. Instructor Pavith designs it personally each cycle, and his design philosophy is essentially find the seam between a candidate's physical limit and their willingness to continue past it and then press on that seam until something gives. The obstacles aren't randomly brutal. When they're specifically calibrated, they ask different things of different bodies. For the Keth, the hardest section is the narrow vertical climb. They're dense and it costs them. For the Velhari, it's the sustained load carry. Their speed comes with a trade-off in raw hauling capacity. For the Drun, it's, I don't know, honestly, the Drun seem bothered by things I can't predict and unbothered by things I'd expect to be hard, and I've stopped trying to categorize it. For Viola Moss, everyone assumed, the hardest section would be the weight carry. She had the least mass in the batch. The carry distance was not calibrated for her body. She picked up the pack. She didn't look at the weight. She looked at the end of the carry lane, and she carried it. Not fast, not gracefully. She was tilted 20 degrees toward the ground within the first 50 meters. Her breathing turned into something that sounded like controlled mechanical effort, like a piece of equipment working at high capacity, and her face was doing something I can only describe as closed off. Not pained, not determined, just absent, like she had evacuated the part of herself that could experience discomfort and left the part that could just continue. She didn't put it down. Carry distance, 800 meters. She put it down at the end and stood up straight and rolled her shoulders back, and there was a moment, just a second, where her eyes went a little unfocused, and then they focused again, and she moved to the next obstacle. The candidate beside her, a Keth named Vorith, who had been scoring in the top tier all cycle, watched her do the shoulder roll. He said something to the Keth next to him. I was too far away to hear it. I logged 1042, human moss, full carry completion, did not vocalize distress. Keth Vorith reaction, unknown. Note for follow-up. Week 3, Day 6, night exercise. Simulated hostile contact, limited visibility, and split team extraction. I'm positioned in the observation bay above the floor. It's a suspended platform with full visual of the exercise space, one-way glass, and a chair that is specifically designed by some architect with no understanding of long observation shifts because it becomes agonizing after hour 2. I am on hour 3. I am also on my 4th RECVA. My notes for hour 3, exercise hour 1, are mostly procedural. Team positions, communication patterns, early contact simulation. Thy standard, the Velhari are doing excellent work on the eastern route. The Keth are doing what Keth do in low light, which is move slowly and correctly and make no mistakes. And sometimes that is exactly right, and sometimes it costs you, and in this case it's costing them a little on the eastern route, where the Velhari are already 30 meters ahead. Then the secondary contact scenario triggers. Instructor Paveth designs the secondary contact to split teams unexpectedly. Someone gets cut off. Someone has to improvise. Someone finds out whether they default to procedure or to creative problem solving when the situation stops matching their training. The candidate who gets cut off in this particular scenario is Viola Moss. She is separated from her team by a simulated structural failure. 2 sections of corridor blocked, access to the primary route removed, extraction objective still active. I watch. She stops. Means she stands in the blocked corridor and she is perfectly still for, I'm timing it in my log, 4 seconds, which doesn't sound long. In a simulated combat scenario, 4 seconds is actually a noticeable pause. The kind of pause that gets noted in assessments. The kind that Instructor Paveth circles on the playback. 4 seconds. Then she looks up. The ceiling of the training bay has ventilation infrastructure, standard construction, not part of the exercise design, running along the upper third of the space. Maintenance access panels, cable housing, ductwork. She looks at it for 2 seconds. Then she finds a foothold on the blocked corridor section. She climbs. Not the route, not the designated path, not even a path that was intended to exist. She gets into the ventilation infrastructure and she moves through it and she comes out on the other side of the blocked section and she completes the extraction objective and she comes in second overall behind a Velhari who had clear corridors the entire run. When she drops back down to the floor on the other side, she is dusty and her left forearm has a long scrape from something in the ducting and she looks at it once with that unclassified expression and then she does not look at it again. I realize I've been leaning forward in my observation chair. I sit back. I drink RECVA that has gone cold. I write in my log, 2,247. Human moss. Non-standard route acquisition. Climbed structural infrastructure. No hesitation after initial 4-second assessment pause. Extraction completed. Note. Did not seek designated path. Sought functional path. Below that I write, note for personal record. Not official. Instructor Paveth's prediction may require revision. Below that I write, don't tell Paveth I wrote that. Week 4 is psychological assessment week. This is the week where, in my experience, across 6 cycles, you find out who the candidates actually are under the performance. Physical capability is a variable. You can train it, improve it, compensate for its limits. But psychological architecture is more fixed. Under sustained pressure, under sleep deficit, under the particular grinding misery of week four's design. The people reveal the load-bearing structures of their personality whether they want to or not. Viola Moss revealed hers on day 3 of week 4. Day 3 involves what the program calls cascading failure simulation. You are given a multi-step objective, and at each step, something goes wrong, and the wrongs compound on each other. And the assessment is not whether you succeed, but whether you can maintain decision-making clarity as the failure accumulates. Most candidates hit a wall, metaphorical, somewhere in the middle. Not because they're not capable, because cascading failure is psychologically designed to trigger a spiral, and most beings, Keth, Velhari, Droon, spiral. It is the appropriate response to a situation that is telling you, relentlessly, that your actions are not producing results. Viola Moss did not spiral. She also did not stay calm in the way I'd expect from someone who was suppressing. That flat, effortful stillness that reads as controlled panic. She just adapted. Each failure, she reassessed. Quickly and without audible distress. Like she was solving a logistics problem, not experiencing a psychological emergency. At failure point 5, the 5th compounding wrong, she did something I've never logged in 6 cycles. She started talking to herself, not panicking, not narrating. She was debugging. Okay, so that's out. That route's gone, that contact is gone, that supply is gone. What's actually here? What's actually here? She said, what's actually here 3 times, in different tones. First like a question, then like a reminder, then like an answer. And then she did something with what was actually there. It wasn't optimal. It wasn't elegant. It got the objective partially completed, not full marks by any measure. But it got it partially completed, which, in a cascade failure simulation, given how the points are weighted, I double-checked the scoring matrix. Then I checked it again. She scored higher on week 4's cascade simulation than any non-Velhari candidate I'd observed in 6 cycles. Not because she succeeded, because she refused to stop finding angles. I wrote, Day 14, Cascade Failure Sim. Human Moss. Vocal debugging behavior. Self-directed, real-time reassessment. Partial completion. Score, 2nd percentile overall. Score is not the data point. The debugging behavior is the data point. I also wrote, I need to tell Pavith. Then I did not immediately tell Pavith. I needed another RECVA first. I told Pavith on day 5 of week 4. I showed him the assessment logs, the obstacle course numbers, the night exercise footage, the cascade simulation score, and the method. He watched the footage of the ventilation climb. He watched it twice. So then he watched the cascade simulation recording, the part where she says what's actually here 3 times, and his expression did the thing Keth expressions do when they are processing something that conflicts with their existing model, which looks like nothing from the outside, but which I've learned to recognize as significant internal activity. And he said, that's not a candidate profile I have a training module for, which from Pavith is approximately equivalent to another being saying, that is extraordinary, and I don't understand it, and it concerns me in a way I find interesting. And I said, I know. He said, she's still middle of the batch physically. I said, yes. He said, the integration scenarios will test that. I said, yes. He closed the footage file and picked up his own cup of something I'd always assumed was the Keth equivalent of RECVA. Equally unpleasant, equally habitual, and he looked at the blank observation window for a moment. Flag her for individual monitoring in integration, he said. Not a compliment, not a revised prediction. And just, something here requires closer attention. I logged it. Instructor Pavith. Human Moss flagged for individual integration monitoring. Washout prediction, not revised, not confirmed. Then I added, week 5 begins in 48 hours. Integration begins week 11. Then I added, she has 6 weeks to show him something he doesn't have a category for. I didn't know it would only take 1,